Hello, friends. It's been so long. I have been MIA, but I am back and very excited to be back. And today's conversation is one that I'm excited to talk about more so because I don't think it's talked about enough. Also apprehensive because it's nuanced, it's personal, and it is complex. But I'll give it my best shot in articulating all the thoughts in my head. I was having a conversation the other day around women, career, family, finance, all of it. But one thing that kept sitting with me after the conversation was this idea that we hear all the time now: 30 is the new 20. And honestly, to say I disagree with that statement is an understatement, okay? Or at least I don't think it's true in the way that society is using it. Because I think somewhere along the lines, we started treating 20s as though it's some disposable decade where nothing really matters just yet. Like you can drift through your 20s and magically figure out everything in your 30s. And I don't just think life works that way. Now, before I continue, I want to say something carefully because I know conversation around family and children can be deeply personal and emotional. There are women who desperately want children and are struggling to conceive. There are women dealing with infertility, loss, complications, and disappointment. And that pain is real. If this topic is difficult for you right now, please feel free to completely skip this video. But one thing I've been noticing from a societal lens is this growing rhetoric around children. Children are often spoken about like they're some burden, like they ruin your life, stop your dreams, steal your freedom, and take away your identity. And yes, parenting is hard. It is sacrificial. It changes your life completely. But hard doesn't equal bad. I think children are one of the greatest gifts from God. I think they add richness, depth, meaning, purpose in a way that is hard to fully put into words. I think it's one of the ways we really grasp the heart of God towards us, that the Father's heart, where you can have this being that you love sacrificially and pour everything into, and yet they cannot do anything for you. It helps us understand this depth of God's love in a way that I think nothing else can. And to be clear, I'm not saying you cannot have a meaningful life without children, but I am saying children should not be viewed as negative. And I think this rhetoric has influenced a lot of how we think about family, marriage, and timing today. Now, having said that, I don't think the answer is women should just rush and have kids super young like it used to be back in the day, because that was one of the conversation points that came up in my discussion. It's like, oh yeah, back in the day, society was more wholesome and all that when women used to have kids earlier and all that stuff. Life today is very different than it was back in the day. Back then, people also had shorter lifespan. People were dying at 40, 50s. Today, thank God, people live till 70, 80, 90. Our life expectancy is completely different. Life is also fuller now. People are going to school longer, building careers, have the opportunity to travel, exploring, doing more with their lives. So I don't think the solution is rushing or panicking. I think what's missing today is intentionality. That's the real point I actually want to make. Because I think we've created this false narrative where women think they only have two options or two choices: have children young and sacrifice your ambition, or build your career and sacrifice your family. And I honestly don't think it's that black and white. But I do think that women need to be honest about reality. Your early 20s are the years where you're usually trying to establish yourself in your career, prove your competency, gain respect, figure out who you are, what you like, what you don't like, build financial stability, and if you add pregnancy, childbirth, breastfeeding, emotional and physical recovery, all at the same time, that can be a massive load for one person to carry. And hear me, this isn't about capacity, because women are incredibly capable. But biologically, emotionally, and physically, women and men are not carrying the exact same burden in early parenthood. A man can become a father and still continue climbing up the career ladder without his body being impacted in the same way. For women, it's different. And because of that, something usually's gotta give. Now, for some women, the trade off is completely worth it. Maybe they want to be home more. Maybe they have incredible family support. Maybe they genuinely desire motherhood to be earlier on and absolutely love that season of their life. And that's beautiful, so beautiful. But for other women, they want to establish themselves a bit more first. Not because they don't value family, not because they love their career more than children, but because they recognize that being a bit more financially established later may allow them show up better for both family and career. Maybe later they can afford help, have more schedule flexibility from being in their career longer, having proved to themselves, having good reputation, all that stuff. They could probably work remotely, have more autonomy over their time, potentially have two stable incomes in the family, create a lifestyle that allows them to be deeply present, both at home and professionally. And that's also beautiful. Neither path is more morally superior. The issue is not which path you choose. The issue is whether you're choosing intentionally. Because what I see happening today is people living with this vague mentality of, I'll figure it out later, there's still time. But life doesn't just organize itself one day out of the blue for you. Your 20s are so formative. There are the years where you begin deciding, what kind of life do I want? When do I ideally want those things? What sacrifices am I willing to make? Who am I becoming? What do I like? What do I not like? What matters most to me? And no, this doesn't mean that because you're intentional, like all your plans will go perfectly fine or well. Life still happens. Unexpected things will happen. You cannot control everything. You can desire something, that doesn't mean it happens within your timeline. You're going to have to learn to pivot and make do and all the life lessons that comes with living life. But there's a difference between life happening to you, your life being a reaction, reactive, as opposed to being a design, being a choice. And here's the thing, resentment can happen on both sides. Some may focus entirely on career and realize that they deeply wanted children sooner. Someone else may start their super early and later wish they had more time to build something for themselves. Neither experience is wrong. But I think peace comes when these choices were consciously made and not some default you kind of just drifted into. I actually read this book called The Defining Decade that completely changed how I viewed my 20s. The entire premise is pretty much that your 20s are not some waiting room for real life. They are deeply defining years. Not because you have to have everything completely figured out at 22. Absolutely not. But because the habits, decisions, relationships, direction, and intentionality you build in your 20s shapes so much of your life. And I think that's the part that society is missing right now. Longer lifespan doesn't mean endless time. Intentionality still matters. So I guess my encouragement, especially to women in their 20s, is this: explore your life, travel, build your career, discover yourself, try things, and yes, make mistakes, but don't drift. Don't treat life like something that's just happening passively to you. Ask yourself hard questions. Think about the future you actually want. Be honest about your desires. Be intentional about the kind of life you're building, because your 30s are not going to magically become amazing because you ignored your 20s. And like I said, no, intentionality does not guarantee perfection, but it does mean you're living awake. You're participating in your life. You're helping shape it rather than just simply reacting to it. And honestly, I think that's the difference. And I know this conversation is nuanced, it's emotional, it's layered. So I genuinely would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Do you think society has made people too casual about their 20s? Do you think the 30s, the new 20 sentiment is true? And how do you personally think about intentionality, family, and career? Let's talk. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.